We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. Guys, week 8 stacks. So anyone that's in the chat right now, Mondays, Wednesdays, we are live at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Also Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. That's the big show. But if anyone's in the chat right now, I want to see what your favorite stack is for week 8 before we even start. We got Tennessee, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Las Vegas, Green Bay, Minnesota, and KC, So if you're in the chat right now, type !vote space and the number to register your vote. Let's see where we're at. We do have a couple options here that we're going to go through. Of course, we're going to go through my top 2 stacks on DraftKings, but we're also going to build a couple lineups together that can go in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker. Always a good time. Obviously, if you haven't been here before, we'd love it if you would consider subscribing to the channel. Toss a like on this video. Just really helps more people find it overall. And of course, the podcast, just search Joe Holka on Apple Podcasts. You'll find it. All of these segments do go up if you can't happen to, I guess, hang out with us live. So let's do this. We have a couple votes in the chat already for Tennessee and Cincinnati. I think that's super interesting. Cleveland and Las Vegas is one that a lot of people seem to be talking about. No one on this KC and New York Jets game in the chat. Really, really interesting. Really, really interesting. All right, so let's do this, guys. We're going to move over now to the NFL data table over at linemovement.com. So this is a free resource. You just go to linemovement.com, resources, NFL data table. So we have each position here. We got ownership projections that are uploaded later in the week. And then each position has its own specific stats that I think really matter. So that's kind of what I'm focused on when I'm building my lineups. I'm really starting on this page overall. So one of the things that I kind of want to talk about before we get into my favorite stacks is I think that someone mentioned it earlier. If we can, even these stacks that don't have a quarterback, we want to try and have little mini correlations and really correlate the rest of our lineup as well. So it just makes sense. So it tells a story, some may say. So let's do this. The first stack that I have for you guys today, it is going to be from the game that you guys thought, but might be going a little bit of a different direction here. So my first stack today is going to be Ryan Tannehill. You guys with me? Let me know in the chat if you guys are not with me. Ryan Tannehill. I'm going to go with Corey. I can't quite pull the trigger on Corey Davis. A.J. Brown. We are going to bring this one back on the other side with T. Higgins. So we're going to go with like a smaller stack overall, but the main point of this stack is that I think both the running backs in this game are going to be extremely popular. So Derrick Henry, he's going to be very popular. He's 8K. Looks like he's projecting for a little bit over 20% ownership already. So I want to build a lineup that doesn't have either of these guys. And I think that that might be the path to, I guess, getting access to this game in a more unique fashion. So if we are going to go with Tannehill, I think you could definitely make, I guess, an argument for adding Jonnu Smith to this. Another thing that I like to do on my stacks is add in the tight end. Tight end's such a tough position overall. Sometimes correlating it is kind of the way to go. But I'm a T. Higgins fan overall. At 5,600, a lot of people I think will take the savings with A.J. Green at 45, who's definitely been involved overall. We just saw Tyler Boyd go off last week. Maybe T. Higgins, kind of right in the middle at 5,600, ends up being that guy that you need. Your favorite stack of the week. I'm just going to throw this one at you and see what you got for us. Lost a Harmon interview earlier this week, so I'm going to make you pick up the slack. Maybe he'll owe you a beer or something next time you guys see each other.
Yeah, I already talked about Jimmy G and stacking that game, so I won't repeat that. But we talked about Tannehill and Tennessee. I actually really like the other side of that. I like Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, assuming win doesn't end up being a huge concern. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, A.J. Green, kind of all splitting targets and air yards over the last few weeks. Joe Burrow getting it done on the ground. Titans, the only other team besides the Raiders, like I mentioned, bottom 10 in schedule adjusted points allowed to every single skill position. So a lot of upside there. So I think people are going to be looking at this game. If you want to roster the Burrow side, where do you plant your flag? The one spot Tennessee's been decent has been against the slot. So I think the odd man out there is Tyler Boyd. If you're playing single entry and you have to pick, obviously if you're playing 150, mix and match. If you're playing single entry, you have to plant your flag. I would say Burrow, Higgins, A.J. Green, Malcolm Butler targeted at one of the highest rates in the league. One of their outside corners, Jonathan Joseph, allowing the 6th most fantasy points per target to receivers that he's covering. Those are their outside corners. So AJ and T. Higgins, big games with Joe Burrow this week.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope people would just go back to Boyd after that big game, but I agree with you,
Yeah.
man. AJ Green is still too cheap. Just take the name out of it, all the biases out of it. Still at a 27% target share last week, and he's been looking a lot better. So I'm with you on that. I like that stack quite a bit. I like the Higgins play also because it's right in the middle of Boyd and Green, so he might go a little bit overowned just because of his pricing alone. I just had to come back here to the poll. No one likes this KC and New York Jets game? Really? We talked about last week, like trying to get different with these stacks. Yeah, there's probably a chance the Jets don't score many points. I don't know, guys. I think that Mahomes is super interesting here. I really do. So let's go back to the data sheet here, and I'll tell you why. So if we're just looking at the KC side of this game, Mahomes is really expensive. He's 8,100 in this spot against the Jets. If we're just looking at team total, we know if like there's a couple things that correlate to quarterback scoring, it's efficiency, it's deep ball throwing, but also like we really have to really target these high team totals, right? So not a high game total because we don't know if the Jets are going to do much on the other side. But I think if Patrick Mahomes ends up going a little bit under owned in this spot, we talked about him last week, but I mean that game ended up having a little bit of weather and cold concerns. I think people are still kind of looking at this as like, I don't know. I think Tyreek Hill ends up being probably the highest owned guy in this stack. But what about Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce? And then on the other side of this, let's bring it back with a Matt Harmon favorite earlier this week. Obviously, check out the wide receiver video if you haven't already. Denzel Mims at 3,200. I think the difference is like everyone wanted to talk about Jeff Smith at the Stone Min for a while. His air yards were there, all of that stuff. Denzel Mims actually might be a good player. 7 targets last week, played 45 of 57 snaps, only 4 catches for 42 yards. But he is extremely cheap. He's 3,200 on the Jets side of the ball. So I'm super interested in that. I think that that's a spot that we could go to here for sure. No, I'm not super interested in the revenge spot for Le'Veon Bell. I think he maybe jumps in, gets a touchdown, something like that. But I don't know if that's really something that there's going to be enough consistent volume to go there, even in tournaments for me. Denzel Mims, 3,200 guys. I mean, it is just one game, but 0.7 weighted opportunity. There's a chance that Denzel Mims has arrived. I like him quite a bit, especially at that price. He's just the clear bring back for me for the Jets. I think if we're just looking at the KC side of the ball, Tyreek Hill at 6,700 just seems underpriced to me. And if I didn't mention it before, weighted opportunity rating, it's a mixture of target market share and market share of air yards. Shout out Josh Hermsmeyer, amazing stat for DFS that he built. Tyreek Hill just seems like that guy that could be a little bit, I guess, underappreciated. I don't know if he'll go overlooked in this spot this week. But the one thing that I keep going back to here, guys, is that if we're just looking at the Jets overall, one of the worst teams in the league at defending the deep ball. Also, yards per route run is something that we really value in terms of just trying to find some of the elite wide receivers. We definitely see Tyreek Hill hit that more often than not at a high clip. Weighted opportunity rating, of course, we can use that for tight ends as well. Travis Kelce, 6,600. I think a lot of people might take the savings with Darren Waller in this game, this Vegas and Cleveland game that a lot of people are on. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the stream as well. I like Kelce in this spot. I like it a lot. He's running a ton of routes. Of course, that's super important at the tight end position. He's also running some deeper routes down the field, almost wide receiver-esque. But just he's going to have a really high impact on this game overall from my perspective. So again, we talk about quarterback, team total really matters. At tight end, extremely important, especially these guys that aren't getting as much volume as wide receivers. We have to get touchdowns. So I like the idea of Travis Kelce. We talked a little bit about the other pieces in this game, but I'm not really on CEH, but I think just a real classic, just Mahomes, Tyreek, Kelce stack, bring it back with some value on the other side. I like it. I like it quite a bit. I still can't believe we just didn't get any votes on this one in the chat. I want to hear your take on Henry Ruggs. He's at 4,900. Obviously, this Vegas and Cleveland game is going to be super popular. He seems like a little bit boom bust to me. Only one game this year with over 60 yards in the 4 that he has played. But Cleveland, 5th most deep completions this year in terms of what they've allowed. So there might be some big plays to be had. So tell me about Ruggs this week.
Yeah, I love the matchup against Cleveland because you've mentioned it. You know, we've gone through different parts of the year where we really hammered them as a slot receiver matchup. And then we've also gone through different points of the year where we've really hammered them as a deep matchup. And I feel like the answer is a little bit of everything. Cleveland outside of Myles Garrett. And it's always so interesting when you get these defenses that have that one like transformative talent, but then across the rest of the defense, there's just not much to like. I feel like that's where we're at with Cleveland right now. Like, whether it's Denzel Ward or some of the other guys that have kind of subbed in there due to injury, you've got Carl Joseph as a safety. Like, there's just kind of a lot of a mess in that secondary right now. And I like that for Henry Ruggs, because as you mentioned, I feel like he's kind of boom bust. We've seen, and I think this guy's in play too. Like, we've seen Nelson Aguilar actually get, consistent usage in this offense at this point, like 9 catches, nine targets, 5 catches last week. He started to eat up some of those intermediate targets. He's a guy who I think is in play this week as well. But I think Ruggs specifically, if you're looking for that home run shot, the deep guy, he's been used in that capacity. He opens up the field, I think, for all of these other Raiders players. I would like to see some more, bubble screens, targets around the line of scrimmage for Ruggs. That we sort of started to see that at the beginning of the season. Then he gets injured.
I like it. Yeah, we talked a little bit about Aguilar with Jake Seeley earlier this week, just that he looks like he has so much more confidence finally. Obviously, just getting that opportunity again on another team sometimes isn't the easiest thing in the world. But I do agree with you that this matchup in particular just does shape up a little bit better for Ruggs deep down the field. So I think that's interesting. So let's do this, guys. Let's move over to DK. Let's build a lineup. This is a lineup builder section of the program. So let's start with the first one. We talked about this Tennessee and Cincinnati game. We'll go Tannehill. We'll go A.J. Brown. We'll toss in Jonnu Smith for good measure. Obviously, in this game, Derrick Henry, Gio Bernard going to be extremely popular, so we're going to fade them on this team. We're going to bring it back with T. Higgins, because again, if we're just looking at the Cincinnati side of the ball, A.J. Green, very cheap. I think people will still go there. Tyler Boyd just had a huge game. Maybe T. Higgins ends up going undervalued in this spot. So I like that quite a bit. Let's look at some defenses first. I know there was a couple that people were talking about before. I like to just get like a placeholder in there. It doesn't have to be like a super cheap defense or a super expensive defense, but I want to get something in there so I can start to build around it. One of the ones I've been looking at, again, some of the more popular games, Vegas, Cleveland. A lot of people are talking about Derek Carr as a play this week. We'll see if we get there by Sunday morning at 9 a.m. But what about the Browns defense? Defense that pressures a ton. 2,600. Gives us a little bit of leverage there. I like that quite a bit. So we'll start there. At the running back position, there's a couple guys that I am very interested in this week, even outside of the Derrick Henry and Gio Bernard chalk. The first guy, Kareem Hunt. I think that if we get him, I guess if we get Chubb back anytime soon, we're going to miss the Kareem Hunt at 6,900 in terms of the volume that we're expecting there, right? So you think that's interesting. Obviously, in Minnesota, if we get Dalvin Cook in this game, maybe people are a little bit scared off of this price tag. I don't know. We'll see. He practiced in a limited capacity on Wednesday, so that's something to monitor. Aaron Jones, if he doesn't play this game, he didn't practice on Wednesday. Do we go Jamal Williams back in this spot? He's 6,100. I like that quite a bit. The other guy that I really like, Myles Gaskin. So obviously Tua back in this spot, 5,200. I think it's possible they end up running the ball even more, and they've been running the ball relatively effectively. Gaskin's someone that's active in the passing game. I think he's just really underpriced. So we got some two chalky but nice running back plays in here. We still have a lot of salary to work with overall. So I think that's interesting. In terms of leverage, if we're looking for a wide receiver that can give us a lot of leverage on this slate, I'm trying to figure out kind of the best way to go about doing that. I think that Tyreek Hill is super interesting from a leverage perspective. Maybe he gets a little bit more popular as the week goes on. But I'm trying to figure out if there's another guy in one of these games that's a little bit more expensive that we could go to. Let me know in the chat if you think there's a guy that stands out to you guys. I'm kind of intrigued by the Pittsburgh situation overall. If we just look at some of these guys and their prices, Claypool's 5,200, Juju's 5,400, Deontay Johnson's 5,500. They're all priced the same. No one knows where to go. So I'm intrigued by a Chase Claypool, and maybe that's bad. But let's see what happens if I put Chase Claypool in this lineup at 5,200. If he ends up being super low owned in the spot, I think it could be a reasonable play. We could go Tyreek Hill one off. I don't mind that. We could just add to this stack, play Tyler Boyd in that spot also. Overstack this game. I don't think that's the worst idea. I think the Tyreek Hill one off is interesting though. but I don't know if there's going to be a ton of leverage there. If we didn't want to go there, say we wanted to play another kind of running back situation that I think is interesting. Let's just see what happens if we put Jamal Williams in here at 6,100. What can we get to at this last wide receiver slot? We can get to Ayuk at 5,800. I like it. Let's do that. I think this one fits a little bit better anyway with what we're trying to do here. So we'll start there. That'll be our first lineup. Second lineup, let's go with our KC stack here. I do think there's a chance this one could go under owned because everyone, like the narrative is going to be that the Jets can't put up any points on the other side of it, right? So we got Tyreek Hill. We got Travis Kelce. We're going to bring it back with the Jets player. Who's it going to be? I think we go cheap with Denzel Mims. I think he's a really interesting play overall this week. So I'm not scared to go back to like Hunt in both of these teams, but let's just, for the sake of argument, toss in something like a Gio Bernard here. Let's make sure we get some volume in here before we start. I don't know if I want to play Gio and Henry together anyway. So I guess we're on the full Henry fade. It's not great. Not great. That never really works out for us too well. Someone mentioned the Chargers defense this week. I think that's relatively interesting. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's relatively cheap that I've been on. I think if this Green Bay and Minnesota game ends up being popular, you could potentially look to Green Bay because they're super cheap. Let's do that. We're talking about how to leverage some of these. Like if we're stacking up the Jets and KC for that lineup to probably win, probably gets to the spot where maybe this other game didn't go as well. So let's go Packers. Just as a placeholder, 2,900. See where this leads us. So if we wanted to go to someone like Jamal Williams here, we could do that. We didn't do that on the last lineup. We probably, get a little bit of extra correlation there with Packers. I don't mind that at all. So we have a decent amount of salary here. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 6,500. We could just put in Hunt and see where we're at. 3,700 wide receiver. Is there a punt wide receiver that we really like? We might not have the salary to play Hunt on this team. We got Marcus Johnson at 3K. We already have Denzel Mims in this lineup. We could go Josh Reynolds. I think that's interesting. The full fade of Henry is never a good feeling. I'm with you there. Let's see if there's any little mini correlations in here that we could get. So is there a Minnesota player that would make sense on this team? Probably not. Is there a cheaper Tennessee option? What's Humphreys' price? 38. We're 100 away from Humphreys. So if we didn't play Hunt, where does that get us? We could go if everyone thinks that Le'Veon Bell is going to be a problem and Clyde Edwards-Helaire just flies under the radar at low ownership. I think that's interesting at the very least. Could go, we're 100 away from Kareem Hunt, which is kind of brutal. But I like the idea of having at least one with Gio Bernard with like a Humphreys on the other side. I think that's pretty sharp. Maybe we just add another guy to this stack. Let's just add in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I like that. Let's do that. The full Mahomes stack here. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the stacks portion of the video. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more of this lineup builder style of video. We'll talk through about a couple stacks each and every week. Obviously, we are live each and every Monday and Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Also on Sundays at 9 a.m. So a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys will join us. Definitely check out the podcast feed as well throughout the week. And we will, I always want to remind you guys too, before we get out of here, that we did start a Patreon. So we're going to be building this thing up a ton throughout the rest of the season. $1 per month, 25 cents a week. You get access to our premium Discord chat. A lot of really smart people that will just continue to, keep this conversation going when we're not on stream, but also be there to compete against in this weekly DraftKings tournament just for our community. So I think it's a lot of fun to do that. We gave away a $20 Amazon gift card last week. This week, we're going to give away a $30 Amazon gift card because we've gotten already over 130 people in the Discord, in the Patreon chat already. 15-minute live stream from myself directly before lock. If you have any final questions, that will not be on YouTube. So that there's a ton of value in that. And then sweat the games with us. There's a stream room where we'll walk through, watch Red Zone together and just kind of interact as a group, as a community. Hopefully you guys will join us for that. Hopefully you guys will join us on Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, and then the Tilt Space later on Sunday night. But I'll see you guys then.